Ruby Chen is the father of Itay Chen. It's almost 20 months that you are longing to see your son. We all pray that he's alive. I know you're hoping. And it's hard for anyone to understand the waiting, what you've been going through all this time. How do you feel right now?
Yeah, so Itay is a U.S. citizen. He is one of the two remaining U.S. citizens after we heard today of an operation to get two U.S. citizens out by the IDF. And I think the best adjective is tired. We've been doing this for 20 months. There have been so many ups and downs. We've changed administrations. We've changed, Secretary of States, National Security Advisors. We feel like this ordeal has gone long enough. And we just are simple people. And we feel like we are collateral damage of big issues. And it's a humanitarian thing. There's no competition on pain. You just need to get them out.
Some good news where two members of the hostages held in Gaza were found, the bodies were found. And is that giving you hope?
Well, just to be accurate, they were not found. They were identified, the remains, based on military intelligence operations. So it wasn't by accident.
No, it
And
wasn't.
the Weinstein family is a family that we've, done, dozens and dozens of meetings in Washington, D.C. Judy's mom actually still alive. And they have a large family out in Connecticut and New York City. And we just, pray for them that they have their closure and can start their rehabilitation. I like to say that we, the hostage families, have been beamed up to a alternative universe. And now, at least the Weinstein family get a ticket back into this universe. And we're still waiting to come back to this universe.
The IDF is working daily to try to locate and bring home the hostages. That's two more that they were able to bring home back to Israel, but there are many more still remaining. Do you feel that this ordeal can end quickly? Do you see any movement among the hostage negotiators?
Yeah, so first, I think everyone understands, including the Israeli government, that the way to get the remaining 56 hostages is not via operations, military operations with the IDF. That can only happen in a agreement. And on the other side, there's a very bad actor, a terrorist organization. But we as Jewish people, we've survived for thousands of years by valuing life as a virtue. And that means something. And there needs to be a way to get the last hostage out. And then the government of Israel should try to identify ways to protect itself going forward and solve other issues. But as I said previously, we're a simple family people. My son is not the son of a president, a minister, or a prime minister. What we want is to have closure. And I think after 600 days, it's more than enough for the government of Israel to find a way to get a deal that gets all of the hostages out and not in phases.
Ruby, you are an American citizen. Two hostages still remain that are American. Do you feel the United States government has done enough? Do you feel that the Israeli government has done enough?
I think this administration, when it came in, immediately, took the ball from the previous administration. And I could say for a fact that, it was a bipartisan effort that got the deal in January, with Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Waltz working with the previous administration, even before the inauguration. But, there are data points that show that, there's always more that can be done. And just one data point, I think the majority of the US public are not aware of the fact that on October 7th, 45 US citizens were killed. That is the single largest attack on US citizens, excluding 9/11. You need to go back to the 1980s. So it's not as the United States is just a facilitator. They actually have equity in this, meaning justice needs to be seen. And yes, my son is a US citizen and I pay taxes in the States, no different than anybody else in the United States. And there's an expectation, a legal obligation that this administration needs to find a way to get my son back.
You addressed the UN Security Council. And looking back, do you feel that that is going to have any impact? Is it going to change anything?
The UN exists, and we can't attempt to ignore it. Neither does the United States. Even the Prime Minister of Israel goes to the UN and speaks at the General Assembly. I intend to be back at the UN next week, following up on some of the relationships that were generated following my speech at the Security Council. And this thing of missing people in areas of conflict, 56,000 people have been recorded by the United Nations as missing in areas of conflict, areas such as South Korea, in Ukraine, Russia, in China. Many people have been lost. And it's a humanitarian issue. I think that is one of the core issues that the UN should focus on to try to solve. And within that, I hope to believe that it's not a political issue. And as I said, there's no competition on pay. And we just need to be able to have that closure. And one of the things that the UN passed is a resolution 2474 that speaks about that in areas of conflict, one of the first things that happen, there needs to be acknowledgement from the other side who is in their possession, and B, to bring calm to the area of conflict, there should be an exchange of the deceased to provide the final dignity that any person on this planet should have, and that is to bring him back to burial. That is something that is said in all of the religions, including Islam. So we look at the situation in Gaza where there are dozens of hostages that were notified that they were killed on October 7th, and it is the lowest type of psychological warfare for a terrorist organization to hold dead people as negotiation chips. And I don't care what religion you are, that is something that you just can't do.
Qatar, the relationships that Israel has and the United States has with them is something that's a bit ominous. On one hand, you have Qatar, which was very much involved in helping to get money to Gaza, to Hamas, that helped build these tunnels, that created this entire problem. By the same token, Qatar is the country of origin whose leadership are acting as the negotiators. How does that sit with you?
So Qatar always replies to that assessment that it was the government of Israel that requested Qatar to be the facilitator of moving money to Hamas. So, they do not take blame for that assessment. But it is known that they are financial and ideological supporters of the Islam Brotherhood, and are a very extreme organization that believe in killing Jews wherever they are. And it's a topic that I think needs to be solved in the near future, but the focus at the moment should be the release of the hostages and getting calm in the region, which is the United States' strategic interest. The United States and Qatar have a very good diplomatic relationship, but I think it's time to reassess that relationship. But at the moment, they are acting as a positive influence to get the hostages out. This is what Mr. Steve Witkoff has said to us multiple times, as well as other of the administration. And we need to have faith that Mr. Witkoff understands, what are the advantages and disadvantages of Qatar in this situation, and acts accordingly.
Ruby, your life changed. October 7th, your life became a different story. If you look at the mission of what your life is about today, how do you explain it?
It's difficult to process. I come from a business background. I dealt with technology companies, investing in them, and now I'm something else. And, you know, I know that I am a voice for others of the hostage families that have lost their voice, so might not be able to articulate themselves, albeit my New York accent. But still, I think that all the families have evolved to something else. And it's going to be a long process to figure out, exactly what do we do from here. But at the moment, all of our energy is focused on one thing, and I think it should, as any father or parent, you know, your kid disappears on you. The only thing you could think is, I need to get him back, whatever his physical status is. And then we could deal as a family together with what lies ahead for us and the challenges that we face. It's just impossible to leave this as an open issue and try to think of the future. So our future is today until we get to that gate, metaphorically, of being able to have that closure, then being able to think together, what do we do in the future?
How is your wife Haggai doing and the rest of your family?
It's very difficult, a mom and a son, it's a very special bond. He was always a favorite. I would, typically have disagreements with Itay. Itay is the middle sibling. He has an elder sibling and a younger sibling, so he was the more challenging one, so to speak. And we would have, our fights, and he would, at one point say to me, Dad, why are we wasting energy? I'm gonna go to mom. Mom's gonna say yes anyway. So why waste all this time and all this energy? And he would typically be correct in his assessment. We are avid basketball, fans, NBA, as a proud New Yorker, New York Knicks fan. For the love of God, I don't know how he became a Celtics fan, so in a alternative universe, we would have been watching, the NBA, the Knicks against the Celtics, and just, having any type of father-son type of evening. But we were beamed up to this different universe, and it's so unfortunate that, it's taken so long. And we, as I said, collateral damage. Like, we just need the United States to put enough pressure on both sides, not just on from us, to be able to close those negotiation gaps, find a way to get the hostages out, including my son, and then, they could keep on doing what they've been doing for decades and decades, talking about the Palestinian issue. I think we need to decouple that issue, which is a very challenging topic, to the fact that this is a humanitarian issue. There are also people in Gaza that have been suffering for too long, being used as human shields by a terrorist organization that has no care whatsoever for the lives of the people in Gaza. And there needs to be a better future for all of us.
You have been one of the leading voices in terms of speaking out on behalf of the hostage families. So much coordination has gone on over these almost 20 months with events all over the world. Is there something that stands out in terms of people that you didn't expect to come forward and help? And looking at from the opposite position as well.
Yes, of course. I got to know very influential people that were willing to take a call with me whatever time in the day in order to be helpful. Um, there are those elected officials, without getting into names, I come from New York City, that you would have expected them to be able to do more on the topic and have not. But it goes back to understanding sometimes what is the interest behind the person that you're speaking with, and trying to find a way to bring them to a point where he's actually willing to do something positive towards the hostages. And it's a human thing. At the end of the day, I'm not going to be able to change a individual in his beliefs. And if this topic is something that is not in his high priority, it's not something that I'm going to be able to change because I said something. I need to just be able to identify those people that have that inner belief that this is the most important topic and that they are willing to do whatever is needed to get the hostages out. I would like to flag out Mr. Witkoff that when we met him the first time, me and my wife in a very private atmosphere setting, he shared with us that he lost his son about a decade and a half ago. And it's a very special bond between us. And I know, it's not something that, that he saw as an opportunity to be President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East. He could kept on doing his real estate deals and wherever, but he was put in a position to save Jewish people. That is something that, is not something that you stumble upon and do not understand the magnitude of the moment. And he's there. And he definitely is someone that will do anything to be able to get all the hostages out. And of course, the emphasis is on the US citizens as, he is working on behalf of the US government.
The outcome since the war, the anti-Semitism that has been seen all over the United States, and particularly the terrorist attacks that just took place. As an American, is there anything that you feel should be resonating that people are not seeing, that they're not saying properly, to encourage those that may not understand why this is happening today?
Yes, I think there's education that's missing sometimes. I'll share with you when I was at the Democratic convention in Chicago, where we had a hostage family, Rachel and John Poland, speak. It's a very powerful, emotional speech that they gave. Outside, there were sitting Palestinians in protest. And I decided that I wanted to go outside and speak to them. And I started by saying, are you a proud US citizen? Are you a patriotic US citizen? And of course, the answer was yes. And then I shared with them, are you aware of the fact that 45 US citizens were killed on October 7th? And that's when they take a step back a second and they need to process that. And there's the need to educate both sides. And I understand there's also the Palestinian pain. But what I do know is that by looking at the individual, the human being, and not looking at the collective, that's where anti-Semitism, it is ignorance. Like it's not looking at the individual. We all children of God. We walk this planet together. And we need to find a way to be able to live with one another. And anti-Semitism, just looks at the Jewish people as something that is an obstacle, as the Jewish people have contributed by far the most amount of Nobel Prize winners of any community or religion. There's so much that the Jewish people have given to mankind, and I don't know how people do not see that, all the good that the Jewish people have done. And inside of the United States, it's, I think, a lot of, misinformation. And today, people consume media and build their beliefs in a different way than once upon a time. I used to go up on Walter Cronkite, CBS. That was the news, and it was facts, and it was. And today, you go onto TikTok or whatever, and you get a 30-second video, and you build some sort of opinion. And it's a very difficult issue. I could share that in the White House, meeting President Biden at the time and speaking to him about the topic, he shared the same sentiment that there's a need for change and better education of the people of the United States. And it's a big question to tackle, but going back to our small topic, we're very focused on our issue and wanting to end this conflict. Without the Semitism and without, coupling it with other issues, we just want to decouple this issue of hostages from anti-Semitism or anything else.
Can you leave us with just a small story that you think of that's very special about Itay.
Yeah, I'll go back to the father-son relationship. He's a very avid basketball player, and he loved playing basketball. And there's every father's moment in time where you play basketball with the kid, and you let him beat you, to give him, a positive experience. But there was that day when he was about 15 and a half where I didn't give in, and it beat me. That was a very difficult day for me. But you saw his emotions and how proud he was about putting in that hard work and, being able to make that shot and being able to do what he wanted to do. And then he kept on asking to play again. And I always needed to find different excuses, like I'm busy, I need to do this, I have, a project to finish. But, it's like any father and son that, you see a child mature and become an adult, and he builds his opinions, and you start, trying to give him the foundations to have a life for himself, and it suddenly ends, and you're kind of stuck because it says, look, I had so much work put in, and still a lot of work to continue, like with any child. And we weren't able to protect him enough. And it's very sad. Here in Israel, it's mandatory to do the army. So it's not like he made this a profession for himself. It's something that every one that lives here does. And my family are Holocaust survivors, as well as my wife's family, and understanding the need to protect the Jewish state. And they very much believed in that. And, there was a ceasefire. They were at the border just protecting civilians, and this happened. And as a dad, saying, how wasn't I able to protect him as I should have? And it's also something I would need to live with for the rest of my life as well. And we just want to pray that anyone listening, just call up your senator, call up your congressman, say, this hostage issue needs to end. There are still U.S. citizens out there. Ask them, what have you done today to get those hostages out, and just keep on doing it until we see an end to this humanitarian crisis, and then we can deal with all the other stuff that needs to be dealt with.
Ruby, you're an inspiration, and I wish you only the best of closure to this very, very difficult saga. And thank you very much for joining me here at the Media Line.
Thank you for having us. Light at the end wins darkness. Sometimes it just takes some time. We'll make it happen.